Well, General Motors is in the news again for rear wheel lockup. This time it's a little different, but before I show you this recall, I want you to think about something, and I've been trying to determine what I think is the problem with all of these manufacturers and recalls. As I read through this, just try to think, why do you think this is happening with all of these manufacturers? It just seems odd to me that we are seeing so many problems in powertrains and seemingly like really dumb problems and things that could be prevented. So let's dive into this story. All right, so the headline story, the first recall I want to talk about is the Chevy Silverado Tahoe Suburban recalled over potentially faulty transfer cases now. So we've moved on from engines and transmissions, and now we're back to the transfer case. What's next? The rear differential? This is coming in from GM Authority. General Motors issued a new safety recall for certain units of the Chevy Silverado pickup Tahoe Suburban due to faulty transfer case that could cause the front or rear wheels to lock up without warning. Man, if your front wheel's locked up, that'd be something else. Now, they claim in this recall that it only affects 66 vehicles, but wait till you see the models and the years. It doesn't really make sense. A lot of the time they do this with these recalls, they'll say a really low number, and then they just keep expanding it and adding vehicles later. So this is kind of wild what's missing in the transfer case. It says they've identified 2026 model year Silverados, Tahoes, Suburbans. So some of the 2026s, they say, along with 2015 through 2020 full-size SUVs that may have received replacement transfer cases. So I'm guessing that people were having issues with the 2015 through 2020 transfer cases. They replaced them with one of these newer units that was bad. The automaker said it's missing an oil pickup tube inside the transfer case, which may prevent proper lubrication of internal bearings. It says GM traces this issue back to a supplier, Magna Powertrain de Mexico, Ramos. I'm guessing that it just, at this point, it doesn't matter where things are coming from. Obviously, the hazards are your front or rear wheels could lock up, people could lose control, increase the risk of crash, but you're probably going to have some warning signs. You know, if you don't have proper lubrication, you're going to have the grinding noise, some howling. So there's that. At least you'll get some warning if you're paying attention. But this brings up a bigger question, and it's with their valve bodies, their transmissions, the GM 6.2 liter, Toyota's problems. And I heard this back with the Toyota Tundra, that after COVID, like after 2020 timeframe, we are starting to see a lot lower tenure of employees, meaning that the people working at General Motors, Toyota, all these manufacturers and their suppliers, they have a really low tenure. So they've maybe been there on average 2 to 3 years. That's what we heard from the Toyota guy, Ryan Gregg. And you just wonder if that's the only thing I can point to when I see missing oil pickup tubes inside of transfer cases. I think this just has to be green people. So it doesn't matter where they're being manufactured unless you have just insanely strict processes. You're losing experienced people. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of these issues across multiple brands and across powertrains. You're getting experienced people that are retiring. Maybe they retired early because they didn't want to do certain things that were forced at the time in 2020. And now you're just getting green, inexperienced people on these assembly lines, building these vehicles, maybe even designing them. That's why we're seeing all these problems. That's the only thing I can come up with as to why this is happening. The only other explanation I could think of is some sort of internal sabotage, right? Like somebody was paid or planted at these places from other brands and they're just sabotaging, because it makes absolutely no sense that these billion-dollar companies could make basic mistakes like this. Now, of course, in this case, GM says do not drive your vehicle if you're in one of these categories of vehicles: 2026 Silverados, 16 to 17, 19, 26 Chevy Tahoes, 2015, 17 through 20, and 26 Chevy Suburbans. You know, the list goes on there. I'm not going to read them all off. And not to be outdone, Jeep Cherokee power transfer unit recall follows crash and injury. So this is the fourth time the Jeep Cherokee power transfer unit recall has been announced, this time for 61,000 Jeeps. Recall includes 2019 through 2023 Jeep Cherokee vehicles equipped with power transfer units that can fail. The crazy thing about this is they can lose power, or they could even roll away while in park. So that's really, really convenient. If you're parked on a hill, your vehicle could just roll away and cause an accident there. Now, we see this with Ford, GM, Toyota. All of these manufacturers do this, where they have a problem and they only recall a couple years initially, and then you see this recall expand, and they just keep allowing them to kind of punt the ball down the road. So they don't ever look at, hey, that's the same part in the newer vehicles, and they don't force a recall on the newer ones, and they just keep letting them sell these vehicles. It's kind of sinister when you think about it. They said in June 2020, Chrysler recalled the 2014 through 17 Jeep Cherokees for the failure of the power transfer unit input splines. So this is not a new thing. It's the fourth time it's happened. They just keep putting this junk in vehicles and then following up with a recall later. They say that engineers found improperly seated snap rings in the power transfer unit that cause the Jeeps to lose power or roll away when parked. Improperly seated snap rings, I mean, that's either bad QA, bad machines, or people that are just inexperienced. And their investigation actually found, FCA's investigation found 1 crash, 1 injury, 387 warranty claims, along with various other reports. So if you do see that 4-wheel drive message on your dash in one of these vehicles, hear an abnormal noise, that's probably what it is. And of course, dating back to May 3rd, Ford recalled 195,000 2024 through 2026 Ford Rangers and 24 through 26 Ford Broncos over seat problems again. Now this one is the seat structure assembly supplier initiated a process to check the torque on the front seat frame height adjustment pivot bolts. The action inadvertently disrupted the curing of the adhesive patch on the threaded fastener, which can allow the pivot bolt to loosen over time and eventually dislodge. So again, we're unable to bolt seats down properly in vehicles. They've had at least 60 warranty claims, and the driver may know there's a problem if your seat squeaks, rattles, or seems loose. Now, this has been kind of the story with Ford all along, right? Their powertrains haven't been quite as problematic as General Motors or even Toyota for that matter, but they've had so many other recalls. Just in 2026, it says Ford's had 34 safety recalls so far in 2026, and dealerships are behind. So these recalls are definitely keeping the dealerships busy, keeping Ford in the news in a bad way. They aren't catastrophic powertrain failures, probably not going to, well, you might die if your seat is loose, so there's that. It's definitely risky, but it's just, you have to ask yourself, why is this happening with all of these manufacturers in seemingly simple things? You know, the order of operations, torquing bolts, missing oil pickup tubes. It just seems like maybe the tenure, the lack of experience with employees, that's what it seems like to me. That's the only thing I can come up with. I know back when Toyota was having issues with some of even the Tacoma in Mexico, they said it was because they had a lot of new employees that they were training at those facilities. They just have problems. When you have new employees, you got to train them. They're going to make mistakes, and those mistakes lead to things like this. It doesn't matter what brand it is. We just didn't seem to have, I don't think we had this many recalls and this many basic mistakes that you see. And of course, powertrain issues. I can't believe how many powertrain issues across brands that we see, whether it's main bearings or crankshafts, whatever it is, debris left in engines, seems pretty bad. Oh, and maybe the funniest one that I've seen so far on May 12th, AC Delco GMW.3 brake and clutch fluid recall. So they're recalling, like, let's say 40,000 bottles are recalled because braking performance can be affected with contaminated brake fluid. So you can't even buy brand new brake fluid out of a bottle or clutch fluid and have it not be contaminated anymore. What is going on? I mean, this is crazy. They say that they tested samples. They think it's from additives, and they don't know where it's coming from. They just aren't sure. Very, very comforting. But I'd love to know your guys' thoughts on why do you think this keeps happening, every week, every month, and replacement engines, which I'll probably do a video on next, seem to be popping just as fast as the factory engines, at least for General Motors. Thanks for watching. As always, till next time.